I was not born Dale Bozio, internationally known singer, girl with the multicolored hair and provocative plexiglass wardrobe. I was not born daring and with a head full of my own fantasy world dreams. I was not brought into this world a noticeable one. That would come much later. I was born little Dale Frances Consalvi, Italian and French-American daughter of Edward Icilio Consalvi and the beautiful Mary Hazel Gallant Consalvi. Everyone just called her Hazel. My mother was the most beautiful woman I ever saw, much more beautiful than me. I often thought I must be adopted. I still do. My arrival date was March 2nd, 1955. My birthday has become a source of joy and pain over the years. I share it with one of my sons, Troy, but it is also the day I lost my mother and brother. My mom died on my birthday in 2013. My brother passed away a year later, to the day. Happy birthday indeed. My parents named me after Dale Evans, the legendary cowgirl star who shared the screen and her life with her husband, Roy Rogers. It's hard to explain now, but back then Dale Evans and Roy Rogers were the biggest stars on radio and then TV, as well as a few films. If you were to compare them to today's celebrities, they were on par with Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, minus the tabloid reports. I was their second child, I think. Again, my mom was stunning. I'm not. My big brother, Brian Edward Consalvi, had arrived in this world 9 years earlier. From day one, he was my protector and hero, buying me whatever I wanted, teaching me not to follow his path of bad behavior that would eventually land him in prison, more than once. At first glance, Consalvi may not be the most rock and roll name, but its roots run deep, all the way back to the Vatican. My seventh-generation grand-uncle was Ercole Consalvi, an Italian statesman and cardinal, confidant to Pope Pius VII. He was just 2 weeks away from being the Pope himself, if not for his untimely death. He died of an unexpected heart attack 14 days before he was to become the pontiff. He is entombed at the Vatican with the popes. When you are that close to becoming the Holy Father, you are preliminarily ordained. I got to see his tomb when Frank Zappa sent Terry Bozzio and me to the Vatican while we were on tour with him in Rome. You could say music was in my blood. My grandfather, Icilio Consalvi, 1865 to 1951, was known as one of the greatest master craftsmen. He invented the king banjo, a jewel-encrusted masterpiece with 300,000 precious gems, stones, and mother-of-pearl inlay. He engraved it down to the pupil of the angel's eye. It's exquisite. My grandfather also invented the first resonator for guitars and banjos. He took it from cat guts to sterling silver. It won awards, including one at the 1895 World's Fair. My father told us stories of his youth growing up, where the banjo was kept in its own temperature-controlled room in my grandfather's house. It was encased in a solid, clear glass case that hung in the center of the room from 4 chains attached to the beams of the house's ceiling. No one was ever allowed to enter the room. It was sacred ground. All the windows were boarded up to keep light off the instrument's majestic surface. When my grandfather and then grandmother passed away, my father took the banjo to live with him. He kept it his whole life. We had a Victorian chaise lounge in my parents' room that its case laid on. We were never allowed to touch it or sit next to it. My mom and dad had twin beds in their bedroom, a common practice at the time. When my mother left, years later, the banjo moved from the bench to my mother's now empty twin bed. 2 beds, one for my father, one for the banjo. The banjo then had a bed of its own. It would rest there near him at night, secured with my father, protected. We ultimately donated it. It ordains the musical instruments in the permanent collection of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, secured there in perpetuity. Once a year, the Queen of England would kiss my grandfather's hand. He constructed ivory chairs and the finest jewel-filled tiaras for her. She considered him the finest craftsman she had ever known. He also made jewelry for Isabella Stewart Gardner in Boston. A very famous museum sits there today that still carries her name. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is home to fine art, and years ago was the scene of a major art heist. Isabella would pick up my grandfather in a white chariot-like carriage pulled by horses and drive him around town and through the Boston Common and Public Garden. Rumor has it she was the greatest love of his life. My grandmother Francesca, his wife, never spoke a word of English, only Italian. She never said a word about my grandfather's alleged dalliances in either language. It just wasn't her place in those times.